Hello everyone. We're just getting started here, getting all the streams kicked off. We're in the madhouse that is Lamania here today for the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream. Also, I'm going to do this again once we actually go live, but I do want to say there's someone judging me silently with me, and that would be Linabelle. Hi, Linabelle. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here and talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, we're doing what I would call pre-live. I'm gonna snip all this stuff out in a second, but I want to make sure I've got all three chat rooms going, and all three, streams, essentially, acceptable before I do a formal introduction. And then usually afterwards I just cut all that stuff out. But it's a good opportunity in case we have any last-second issues to catch them before we totally go live. But I see us doing real good here, so. All right. Hello, welcome to the weekly Wednesday lunchtime live stream on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. I am Didio's community manager, Cordovan, and I have a special guest with me today. I've got Linabelle, who's going to be here to talk about some of what we're going to be showing you and discussing that you can see right now on Lamania. So without further ado, say hello, Linabelle.
Hey, everybody. I'm just super happy to be here.
The reason you're here is you've been kind of doing at least some of the work related to what we're talking about today, which is that we have a new preview up on Lamania, and that preview has some significant performance changes that are taking place. We're going to delve into how it impacts things like combat here in just a little bit. We'll show you the threads that are available to read on Lamania, and we'll encourage you to actually go to Lamania, especially tonight, because we have a dev event, right? I'm pretty sure you're going to be there, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be there too, but also Kokomo Jobo, who I see is already on the test dojo here, will be there, and others to do directed feedback. In particular, hey, if you want to do some rating with a dev, this might be a good night to do that. So Linabelle, can we start a little bit about how this came about? What are we trying to do here?
All right. Well, I don't think it's as taboo for us to say that Didio has suffered with some performance degradation right now, and we've been behind the scenes looking for basically any solution that we could possibly find to help alleviate this, because we know it's a huge pain point, and we really want to get this all solved for you guys so you can go back to your regular questing. And so part of that means that we have to we're kind of thinking outside the box here, and we did a whole bunch of performance profiling. And so not only did we look at just what caused a lag on live, but we're also using our internal tools to measure things that players can't see. One of the most key metrics of this, I'm going to talk about this a whole bunch, are server frames, or server frames per second. This is basically like your frames per second on the client, but it's for the machine that controls all of the instances on the server. So it's a little bit more removed from what players would see. Anyway, so...
Hey, so, I mean, here's part of why you're here, too, though, is because we're going to get fairly crunchy, as I would call it. We're going to talk some of this tech here, and it is a little complicated because it involves things like, well, why would this be impacting maybe people on other parts of the server and all that sort of thing. So let me get a forum thread up here. And I also want to real quick throw out in chat, I did a little bit of tweaking on audio levels. I hear initially maybe, Linabelle, you were just slightly loud, but make no changes on your end, because I think I've taken care of it on my side here. So let me know if this sounds a little bit better. It sounds like it does. All right. What are we really here to talk about? Why are we here? Thread, changes focused on boosting game performance. So, in update 49, we are making some significant changes to how melee and missile combat is calculated to address long-term community and development team concerns about game performance. Before this change, we found that basically when a lot of on-hit effects were proccing at once, it would essentially create an effects queue. And what that would cause would be combat processing lag for everyone, not just, say, in your group, but on the same physical hardware server while the queue is being processed. And so what we're doing here largely is consolidating some of the way combat communicates in order to reduce the load and stop that effects queue from happening. Is that a pretty good assessment, would you say, Linabelle?
Yes. Basically, behind the scenes, our real goal here was to reduce the amount of procs per minute that an average group would be able to generate. Because DDO can handle a whole bunch of calculations at a time, and it goes, it just goes through as a queue. So first in, last out, and or first in, first out, and it just goes like, oh, this is an effect, better apply that. Oh, this is a damage effect, better apply that, and go, 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 go. And if we're ever in a situation where a group can apply more procs per second than the game can, go through per second, then over time those effects will queue up. And then when I reach a certain buffer state, the game goes, okay, we've got to clear this queue because we're holding way too much memory for just this one instance or just this one bare metal that's holding all these instances. And we're going to slow everything down and we're going to do this whole queue out. And what ends up happening is that doesn't actually really solve the problem because then players just apply all their effects again and we're back into the queue. And so for a raid group, you just end up with just really terrible performance. Like you'd end up with degraded performance almost immediately. And that would never really clear up as you progress the raid because there was always the same amount of procs per minute.
Yeah.
So our changes are focused entirely upon taking drastic action to reduce the number of procs per minute with the least amount of gameplay performance or least amount of gameplay changes we could feasibly put together. Mm-hmm. Our goal here isn't really to change balance in between how different classes or different builds work against each other. Our goal here is just to go, how much can we condense? How much can we put together? Because we've got to attack that lag.
Okay. So are we in a position to get to the, so then what the heck are we doing bit yet?
Yes, I can run through that.
Nice.
So,
sorry, but we want to make sure that you who might be watching or listening here kind of understand why we're doing what we're doing here, and yes. This is meant to really make some pretty substantive changes in the way, in addressing a pretty clear cause of lag. Is this going to solve all lag? Of course not. Is this going to perhaps, and we believe, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this, it's going to be making a pretty significant difference in stopping this effects queue from happening. And we know that the effects queue is a cause of lag.
Yeah, when it comes to running down performance problems, we get a solid repro together, a solid reproduction of what's happening, and then we see if we can solve that one repro, and we repeat that 100 times. And usually those changes aren't visible to people, but this one is. So we wanted to go through on Lamanio, we wanted to go through and just write up everything that's changing, and we wanted to give you guys a chance to try this out because we know this is going to be a really big change.
All right. So I have got my fighter here, who is an admin character created by the name of Performance. And this person is using a basic short sword and attacking the kobold here. It may be a few seconds, Linabelle, before you see it, because you're watching it on the, presumably on the live stream somewhere. There's a built-in delay to that. But you'll just kind of see me swinging and attacking. This is me basically just doing a quick character that I would have maybe just done prior to the changes to see what kind of things might be happening. As you can see, I'm still attacking quite fast here, and there's still, numbers scrolling up off these kobolds here. But far fewer numbers than you would see in the past. You don't see that. And when you stop, boom. See how it stops?
Yeah, I guess it's we can go into what's actually changing. So if you'll notice, looking at all those numbers flying across your screen, you'll notice that some of them have an icon of a pair of white swords next to them. This is similar to where you'd see the icon for point-blank shot. or where you'd see the icon that would denote your weapon's primary damage flags. What this icon means is that you have double strike, or you have double shot if this were a like a ranged attack. And when before a double strike or a double shot or any multi-hit at all would be, you would have an entire other separate attack, an entire other row. What we've done now is that the damage as a whole, you just roll your damage twice. And we know there are a few bugs to run down. Most notably, sneak attack is currently not doubling. But that's we're tackling that right now. But as far as main hand numbers are concerned, over time, this is actually DPS neutral, with the caveat that you're going to see much spikier numbers across the board. The misses are going to be more missing because you can't roll a second attack off a miss anymore. So when you would see like, one hit or two hits, something, you'll see nothing. But since your crits are also automatically multiplied, this actually averages out to a net neutral DPS change. And you might be thinking, well, I don't do a lot of my damage for my primary stuff. There's also a whole bunch of other stuff. Now, it's a little sometimes a little difficult to see here, but we've also multiplied the damage of the on-hit procs that come from your weapon or come from you. So if you're an Eldritch Knight, you do 45 damage of fire every single hit. When you double strike or you double shot, that's going to go up to 90. And if you like triple shot, because you're like using a bow and you're an Eldritch Knight, that would go all the way up to 3 times for 135. And so this ideally should mean that as far as damaging procs are concerned, and as far as damage is concerned, including sneak attack, this is actually a DPS neutral change, with the caveat that it provides far spikier numbers across the board, which means that in practice your DPS may actually increase because spikier damage leads to shorter time to kill over time.
All right.
But that's a little more about the aesthetics of combat than the DPS over time metric. So the big elephant in the room here is that what about things that don't do damage? And this is what the majority of the feedback we've seen so far has been focused on.
Right.
And we're in a very weird situation here in which the combat processing lag, like the lag queue we're trying to do, is caused with a number of procs per minute overreaching whatever processing threshold it is. And we're in a weird situation because if we go through and make all of those procs apply more often, then what we're doing is we're actually undoing the change that we just made because we have just increased the number of procs per minute over again. So if we're going to find some sort of solution for this, it's got to be something a little bit more complicated than just increasing the amount of procs per minute again, because that's the exact same bucket we're currently in. We've got to think of something different. And that's part of why we wanted to do this through like a preview, because sometimes this is where players can figure something out. But we have a few different things to run down. Some of it may not pan out, so I don't want to get your hopes up. And I'm honestly quite confident that even worst case scenario, if literally nothing changes, I mean, assuming we're going to fix all the the bugs here, that I am pretty confident that this is not going to meaningfully affect, at the very least, most avenues of play. And if it turns out that this does affect specific build combinations or specific like people leveraging specific on-hit effects, especially if they're from like a tree, we can go in and we can course correct on an individual level. But a blanket solution that increases procs per minute is pretty much off the table, because then we've just kind of gotten back to where we were before. So we'll think of something.
Okay. Let me hit up chat then while I've got, I think we're at a point to answer some earlier questions here from chat about warlocks and their multiple damages. Is that going to be impacted by this at all?
If I could pontificate for a little bit here, what I think this person is asking is that warlocks and their Eldritch Blast tend to accumulate a lot of on-hit effects or on-spellcast effects that provides a very long damage string. That being said, because Warlock Blasts are very, very limited by their timing interval, like you could only attack with a Warlock and Eldritch Blast so many times a second, you can only use the Aura so many times a second, you can use the Cleave so many times a second, that is far, far, far slower than an average melee with a double strike boost or a haste boost, smack, smack, smack in that raid boss.
Okay.
And so we're not that worried, I would say, about, in a broader sense, about spellcasters deploying a certain number of effects per minute. because they're limited by their cooldown, they're limited by their animation, whereas a melee character they attack so much faster. And ranged characters have so many more projectiles, and that's another part of the performance changes is we drastically condensed now down the amount of fake projectiles that a ranged attack would even throw. So whereas melees went from a double shot to a shot that a double strike that can then double. Even a shuriken thrower, they were throwing up to 5 or 6 projectiles at a time or something. You know what I mean? So it's a very significant change on the ranged front.
Yeah. So it looks like in the test Cobalt or the test dojo here for the stream, we are still seeing kind of some lag, I think, caused just by a lot of people doing a lot of stuff in the dojo. But I noticed that when the dojo is not maybe having its own kind of lag spike related issues, that it's very immediate in terms of the number feedback in a way that it definitely has not always been in DDO's past. I mean, when you're striking, for example, in Svelchen, it's looking very much in sync in terms of the hit and the numbers scrolling up immediately and things like that. And that's really kind of the core of what we're talking about here in terms of how you'll see it on live. You'll know, when you stop attacking, the numbers will stop. When you start attacking and hit, the numbers will be right there, right? But like I say, on the stream here today, I am seeing some delay occasionally, but I think it's just because we've got all this going on, right?
Yeah, that's part of the problems with our any performance changes that we do make is that Lamania or our own internal builds are obviously a very imperfect simulation of the actual live environment, and that there are certain things that cause horrible problems because they're in the test dojo that on live don't have that problem at all, and vice versa. That's part of why we really wanted players to come in and kick the tires on this, is that we can make a really good educated guess, but we're not perfect on this. We're definitely not perfect on this. And it's also possible that this may not do all that we are really hoping it does.
Are you saying it's not going to 100% fix lag? I thought this was going to 100% fix all lag.
I hope so. I was hoping so, but
no, unfortunately, it will not. I mean, I'm sorry to be a little snarky there, but we recognize that this is not going to solve all problems here, right? But it is going to make a pretty significant difference, we believe, that players will be able to notice immediately, and it'll also have that other benefit of helping you parse what's going on, I think, during combat much more cleanly and I don't want to say easily, necessarily. I think easily might be spitting out a combat log as a text file, hint, hint. But you know what I mean. But while you're playing, you can kind of see this stuff happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, this is a very large change, and that's part of why we took so much time and put out all the information, is because we want players to really understand what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And we tried, internally, we've tried a variety of different solutions, some not as good as the others. Our original first draft of this was to iteratively go through every single proc in the entire game, set all of their proc rates to 10%, literally divide them by 10, and then multiply all of their damage or effectiveness by 10, so you'd have a chance to do 90-66 on a hit with a flaming weapon. And that technically definitely did work as far as it helped the problem. But we're okay, this just looks horrendous. We gotta go back to the drawing board. And then we started looking into combat code as a whole, and the solution kind of spiraled outwards from there. Would you mind if I answered a few chat questions?
No, please do. I would like to. That's what we're doing here, right? Yep, go for it.
Yes. So interesting note about strike through. So what's weird about that is that the strike through is a replacement for glancing blows. And I don't know if you guys remember back in the yesteryear when glancing blows were in here. I think it was over a year ago. I certainly don't remember. But glancing blows had a weird auxiliary stat that was a percentage chance to carry over weapon effects with the glancing blows. So it was things on your weapon had a chance to kind of go into the glancing blow and stuff like that. So interestingly enough, the fact that strike through hits less targets but has a greater chance of carrying that glancing blow over, now it's 100% rather than 80% or something like that, We're actually pretty sure it's kind of about the same, a number of effects per second. Like, it just kind of ended up being the same. And at the time, we didn't have any idea that it was the amount of effects firing into this queue that was causing this particular slowdown. So it was just kind of random happenstance that we ended up going in an exactly neutral solution for strike through. So we really dodged that bullet there. So
how does damage reduction, how is it going to get applied in the new scenario? Damage reduction.
So the new multiplication stuff happens right after things like melee power take the wheel as far as the scaled up damage is concerned. And that actually happens in, so if we're thinking about, like, you know, in your mind, imagining going through this code path of us taking all the numbers and doing all the math, that happens before things like damage reduction come into play. So if you have something like if you're hitting a monster with like a DR 50 of silver, and, you know, you do 100 damage that's reduced down to 50, that 100 damage is going to get multiplied, and then it's going to subtract 50 from it when it gets past the multiplication step. So this is advantageous towards the player in overcoming DR, although granted that may change.
Okay. What about Ruin? Are we doing anything with Ruin as part of this?
I don't think so. And from what I understand, Ruin is a single-shot spell. We have some interesting plans for Ruin later in the year, but that's a little getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
And I'm very excited for those.
So what about people who are used to keeping their adrenaline up due to, like, kind of earlier things that are getting changed?
That's a really interesting situation, because, like, when you think about it, adrenaline as its whole is going to be affected by the same amount of global procs per second reduction that we're aiming for here. The difference is that compared to other procs, adrenaline is far more impactful than the average on hit. Like, adrenaline is active gameplay. Adrenaline is the backbone of an entire current epic destiny. And so if we need to make adjustments, adrenaline is probably going to be on that list. Right now, it's doing some very, very funky stuff in which, like, the multiplication from the double strike and stuff like that, multiplied by the multiplication from the adrenaline, so players are going to get to, like, ludicrous numbers. But if you think about it, that's, like, you know, they're also going to be getting less charges over time, and so it's a very interesting situation that we're in. So our goal here is to try to avoid disrupting gameplay too much. But I guess I'm personally really worried that if we get too much into weeds about changing every single ability, we're going to either go back to the exact same place where we currently are, in which the procs per minute is going to degrade game performance, or we're going to end up in a never-ending cycle of adjusting every single effect in the entire game, and that's going to take several months.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Yeah,
that should be fun, though. I mean, well, yes, you raise a good point about why maybe you would want to do it on an individual level for things like that. However, you know, clearly adrenaline is and remains a big part of DDO there. So we'll have to see what the end results are for it, I guess, largely. And then, as you say, you know, if we need to make an adjustment there, we certainly can.
Yeah, it's important to remember that, like, this seems like a really surefire, or really, like, this is a big change, especially for Olamani. Like, this is pretty huge. But this is still a preview, and there is still times for things to change. And, like, we're in some really weird places in the game. Like, it's not often that our combat code gets changed at all. Like, it's, you know, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to figure out some sort of solution.
Someone is saying, what about Colors of the Queen? So we're not going to start going through all these, although I would just bring up Colors of the Queen as, gosh, if anything is causing lag, it's got to be that one, right?
So here's a weird fun fact about DDO. And this is going to blow your mind. Like, this is going to be insane. Yeah. Colors of the Queen has exactly the same performance weight as, like, a flaming, like nerve venom or something like that. It is just one on hit. It just has a really complicated flow to get to the actual on hit. So for when we actually were going through this, we're like, okay, let's look at, like, what do the destinies do? What's going on here? You know, like, what's going on? And the old version of Sense Weakness was actually 3 times as performant weight as far as like versus Colors of the Queen, which was mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling. Wow.
Oh my gosh. Another really easy answer here. Will Vampirism and on-hit attack stuff multiply? Yes, it will. If you are healing 2 damage on every single hit, on a double strike, you will be healing 4. This applies for even things like Reflective Guards. So like Fists of Light, which is kind of weird and it's not really Vampirism anyway, that will also double. On-hit damage that comes from like stat damage should also be doubling. Anything that has like a number, any number part of anything, that number is going to multiply as part of this. And if you find something that isn't doing that, please let us know. We'll track that down ASAP.
I'm going to pick the Morning Lord Hand Axe, I think, because I just want to
Hand
show off
axes-
another sword and board. I think, right?
Hand axes are my personal favorite weapon in DDO. So.
Okay. Cool. Well, that sounds good. I just wanted to show sword and board. And I actually, while I've got you here, speaking about loot, we do have a little bit of loot on Lamania related to a fairly old adventure pack here, too.
Yes, both the free-to-play Lord's March chain, which takes place partially in the 12, and then also the Attack on Stormreach adventure pack have got their loots updated with this. Because it's it's all stuff that uses the old fusible malleable stuff, and we brought that crafting system forward, and we figured, why not make it so that all that loot has way more cool stuff on it. So there's a cool new set bonus that got ported forward, and all those fusible malleable weapons ended up with just a whole bunch more stuff on them, and really excited about that. There's a few little bugs we have to fix. Like I think I forgot to put augment slots on some of the stuff, and I also forgot a whole docent. So thank you to whoever let me know that there's a docent in this pack, because that just blew right past me. And if no one had said anything, I would have just been like, "What's a docent?"
Oh no, yeah. Well, hey, at least it's getting fixed. Back in the day, yeah, right. But I people used to use some of that loot pretty regularly. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like those Vampire Stone Dust wraps. Yeah. Those are classic, man. Those are the best wraps in the game when I started playing.
Yeah. It's a good one. All right, well that's cool. What else should we do? Let me pop over to YouTube comments quick. So, can we talk specifically again? Kind of what? Okay, so what is going to happen to chance-based procs? Like Vorpals, Legendary Ice, etc. Thank you, Yevgeny, I think. Yevgeny, I think, for that one on YouTube.
All right, so this is when I was talking about this earlier before. Those procs are in a very weird state for us because we want to. Obviously, we don't want to just overnight make everyone's stuff completely worthless. That's not one of our goals here. We're not trying to make broad balance changes with this. We're trying to attack a specific source of performance problem. The problem that we're running into is that if we were to go through and just increase their percentage times that they procced, we wouldn't actually solve the performance problem because we'd go back up to the same amount of procs per minute for those procs. So if we do something to them, it's almost certainly going to be in the matter of magnitude. Like when we think about weapon effects, like dealing 1d6 fire on hit, we didn't solve those by making them proc twice. We solved those by increasing their magnitude by 2 or by 3 or by however many times that you double striked. Mm-hmm. And when we want to attack procs like that, we'd want to adjust them from the angle of magnitude and not from the angle of frequency. Okay. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Let me head over to Facebook here quick. Aaron on Facebook is concerned about whether this will be more difficult to make damage calculations. It's believed overall that these changes should actually make it a little easier to make those quick DPS calculations, right? And I guess what can we say about what happens if I actually want to calculate my DPS? What do I need to do?
So it's a weird mathematical experience in which if we take something like Double Strike and we just say, now when Double Strike you just do ×2 damage. Effectively over time, that is a net neutral DPS change, with the caveat that real life is never that simple, because spikier damage correlates to shorter fights. Like gravitating towards larger spikes is over time better for a player than a lot of smaller numbers because you have the chance of winning early and just killing the monster outright. So what I would say would be easier about this system as far as calculations is concerned is it's easier to figure out the amount of damage you're actually doing, because rather than saying, like, when you do a double strike and seeing like 60-60, it will actually do that math for you. It'll just show you 120 and you'll know, oh, I did 120 with that strike.
Okay.
And 60 and 120 are relatively easy numbers to add up. But if its number is like 489 times 2, you know what I mean? Or like 353, then in the moment, like, you know, as we do addition and stuff like that, it's, you know, it's a little harder. That's only for melees. On range, they saw a gigantic stream of numbers, and any condensation on that part would be, like, at the very least, it's a lot easier for me to look at just one number that has the math done on it, rather than, like, you know, 8 or 9 numbers that I have to then add up and then add up all their procs together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What does it mean to the combat log, though? And maybe I could actually just show the combat log in action here.
Right now, there's no combat log feedback that indicates that a specific strike was actually a multi-hit. It simply shows you the higher amount of damage. And that's definitely on our list of things to polish up for this change. We were able to get the floaty text to show the cool icon, but actually getting the combat log to say, like, your multi-hit hit X times for a total of blank damage, I think that would go a long way to helping this sort of, like for like readability purposes, you know what I mean? I know a lot of players like to get into a fight and they go back through their combat log and stuff like that to see, like, whoa, what did I actually do?
But in general, will you actually see much change in your combat log? Because the things that are being rolled will still, well, yeah, I mean, it will be a pretty significant change to the combat log, right?
Yeah, like there will definitely be less things in the combat log. Like, it will scroll less fast, and ideally it will compensate for that by either multiplying out the damage, you know, or figuring something out for non-damaging on-hit procs that are gameplay significant.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Do these changes affect NPCs? I have absolutely no idea if an NPC can double strike, and I'm actually almost 100% sure that since their animations didn't have the double strike scripts in them, that they just don't already, even if they have the double strike stat.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are talking about Reaper point lag. That is definitely on our watch list of reproducible lag. That being said, any changes to, like, the Reaper mode system as a whole would be that's a big, like, thing. We wouldn't want to just throw that into Lamania. That would be a much larger discussion. So not something we would be able to throw in at the last minute.
Sure. What about creature companions? We've pretty much determined, like, we've determined creature companions don't contribute to lag, right?
I mean,
It's
I don't
my
really
belief
think
that they're
so.
basically largely client side only and don't have almost no issue, if any.
Yeah, honestly,
You don't want to answer.
I would say I'm a little
Yeah.
skeptical of the like certain, like, creature companions cause lag. That being said, it's possible that certain creature companions, especially if they're built off an existing monster, may have lingering stuff on them. Like, I know the Pit Fiend has all the regular Pit Fiend sound effects on it, so it's very loud. That's actually on my list of things to adjust, because the Pit Fiend just yells at you.
Oh my gosh, would you please? All right.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Okay, yeah. It's still, though, I remember having this discussion back. Because they're largely client-side only, it really doesn't impact any. Because they're never causing any of these kind of calculations to take place.
Yeah, at the very least, I think players have, at this point, they've played DD a whole bunch, and they have a really good idea of specifically when lag is happening and, like, the scenarios they're in. And sometimes sometimes the players go off on. Sometimes the players get an incomplete picture of what actually causes lag, and they focus on that. In this particular case, though, I think the players and us, like, we were able to say, like, the players were like, hey, when we do a whole bunch of DPS, the monster lags everybody out. And we go, yep, that's definitely happening. Let's look at some solutions for that, because that's we want to mitigate that amount of lag for people. We want to improve the game performance, something we're always looking for. And we really thank you for your patience on this, because this kind of stuff is like, it's pretty serious, and we don't want to rush, especially with overarching solutions like this one.
Yeah. I mean, you can see largely, though, how just during this run around, I'm running around the Ravenloft landscape just to kind of get out of the test dojo, to get maybe a little bit more accurate of an experience, I guess. Because there was just a lot going on in the test dojo.
That's the thing, is like,
I was thinking it was causing some serious issues there, maybe.
Yeah, I was
trying
typing
to be
up
doing this live on the air. So
I was typing up the big Crunchy Details post at the bottom. I'm like typing in like, please come visit Lamani, and in my head I'm like, the test dojo is going to lag no matter what we do. Like, that's just a space that causes lag by virtue of existing.
Yeah. So Jonathan over in Facebook, what about critical and non-critical hit combos from Double Strike? Does that... Oh, let me scroll back up. Does that mean the number displayed is going to be bold, regardless of whether it's 2 crits or just 1? The answer to that is yes, right? If either of them are a crit, it will be a bold number.
So the answer to that is actually, well, it's very complicated. The answer to that is, right now, a subsequent strike rolls its own different roll in order to determine whether or not it's a critical hit. In this new system, your first and only attack is what determines whether or not a strike is a critical hit. And the damage multiplication happens to just whatever damage is calculated out from that. So if your first hit is a crit, it's going to multiply the crit damage. If your first hit is not a crit, it's going to multiply the regular damage. If your first hit is a miss, it will miss the entire way through. Mm-hmm. So that's part of why we're saying that damage is going to be spikier. Because as before, you would get your crits and misses and your hits all peppered through. Now, we're going to be rolling half as much, but the damage is going to be multiplied to compensate. So if you see a critical hit, it's going to be in bold. And if you see a critical hit that is a double strike or a double shot or any multi-hit, it is going to be in bold, and you'll see the icon next to it, and the number is going to be multiplied accordingly.
I see someone on Facebook not being like, how can I be at negative 5,000 hit points? Because I'm on an admin. I'm not doing any... This is just to show the combat experience, so I can't die. I can just absorb damage forever. Pretty much. That's what's going on there. Okay, because someone was sitting there looking at my screen and going, what is this guy doing to have negative 5,000 hit points? Cheater. And yes, I am cheating. I am cheating as an admin. This is exactly what is going on. So... Alright,
yeah, that kind of scenario where it's called admin immortality. It's very, very helpful, especially when because I built the new champions out for the new hardcore league, and it's incredibly helpful to not die all the time when you're trying to make this thing that kills you when it hits you. And it would just really slow me down if I had to resurrect myself. I'm really, really happy with because it seems like players are really, really, really enjoying the new hardcore league. This is it's doing phenomenally well. We're seeing a whole bunch of people get in play, and that's part of why we really want to focus on performance, because in that permadeath scenario, performance is all the more critical, and we're just trying really, really hard to prioritize this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. I want to, I think, get out of Ravenloft here, because, frankly, it's hard for me to see in Ravenloft when I've got spotlights in my face. YouTuber problems, what can I say?
You can tell it to the telepad Market 1 with no spaces to get to the marketplace, if that helps.
Oh, yeah. I learned something today. I've always been doing a slightly different one. All hail the new Mimic Overlords. So, I hinted about the Mimics on the stream a couple weeks ago, and someone, at least one person on the forums, caught that out afterwards. They're like, that's what he was talking about. Yes, that's what I was talking about. And that is the surprise Mimics on hardcore. 100% working as intended. That unfortunately April 1st happened at the same time is a little unfortunate because it really had nothing to do with an April Fool's joke. But other than that, you know,
if you'll indulge me for a moment,
sure.
I have a real dislike for the April Fool's Day holiday. I actually think it's my least favorite holiday ever. I'm not a fan. I am a big party pooper when it comes to April Fools, and that's my opinion. I don't like it. That's where I'm at.
I tend to agree. I think especially, you know, I've been doing this long enough now that I remember when it was more of a thing, and then there kind of was a backlash against it. I think driven by maybe some poor quality ideas done, you know, on the corporate, not our corporate level, but just generally at the corporate level, year after year after year. People got kind of sick of the whole April Fool's thing a little bit.
Yeah, although I will say, I don't want to tip our hands too much. I think it would be funny to have like an April Fool's Day patch notes kind of thing.
Oh, I'm definitely down for doing something at some point. But it's got to feel right. It's got to feel right. And Mimics on a Hardcore would not be our April Fool's joke.
Yes, that was just to kill you. That was entirely just to cause fear in the masses.
Yeah. I'm just popping into Devil Assault. This seemed like about as good a place as any to see some numbers scrolling. Yep. Improved Traveler event. Someday maybe we could do something about the Festival of the Traveler. That's actually coming back here real soon. It doesn't really offer much nowadays. But it's there for those who want it. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of ideas out there. It's just a matter of kind of, you know, finding the time and making it all happen, right? So, but I bring it up though because I actually saw that on our bonus schedule here in the real near future. For those of you who are like, hey, I just kind of want to run it for fun, you're gonna have an opportunity here in the real near future. Last week's bonus was never announced. I know, it's because I was on vacation, and it slipped through the cracks, unfortunately. By the way, you got a benefit anyway if you played, because it was a Treasure Hunter's boost.
Alright, I'm going to answer a chat question here with the full knowledge that I may be completely misremembering. I am almost 100% sure that we have two different methods of spawning waves. One actually creates a new monster, and the other one finds the old monster that's dead and resurrects it and puts it back up in the same place. And I'm pretty sure that Vision of Destruction uses the latter, like our modern wave spawning thing. That being said, it's stuff like that. Like, we really appreciate, I would say, rather than general reports of, hey, lag's really bad, if you notice that a specific game action, like a specific ability or a specific game thing, repeatedly and reproducibly causes like horrible performance problems, please do let us know so we can just make sure that's on our big list of things to run down. Because this kind of stuff is like, it takes a lot of time. We really don't want to miss anything.
I'm gonna guess this Devil Assault thing though is very much the old wave battle system.
Almost certainly. I don't think anyone has touched this dungeon in a decade.
So. Yes, I would say taking a look at how we allocate and reallocate Reaper points is certainly on our agenda to take a look at.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to make any promises there as to what we might do or whatever. Let's just have a good chance to really kind of take a look at it first. But it's certainly on our agenda.
I talked about this a little bit a few minutes ago, but just in case people missed it, changing the entire back end of how the Reaper system works as a whole it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's a lot of potentially very dangerous things. It's very, very sometimes it's very, very difficult to remove things from players, especially if it's like tree data as a whole. And if we were to replace the system, we would want to make sure the system that's replacing it is adequately balanced, it's adequately like incentivized and stuff like that. And so just simply like removing everybody's Reaper points, I'm pretty sure that would be very, very unpopular. That would be I don't want to put words in the community's mouth here, but I'm fairly sure simply deleting everybody's progress is a really not good idea.
In the code, Do you really want to do this? Are you sure? Are you really sure? No. Yeah. Her answers are, I probably not and no. So yeah.
All right, question: does chest lead generation cause lag? So that's very interesting because chests in the game are straight up baked into the land block, and that kind of generation, like the stuff is done, like when you load into the instance. So whatever's happening, it's probably not because we're spawning in chests, because those chests are already there. I think. I'll be quite honest. I've never actually made content other than a big slide, so I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
Honestly, if it's not slide related, I'm a little out of the loop here. I'll be quite honest.
But because the chess system is baked more into the content side of things rather than.
Yeah, it's very interesting in that it's like I handle all the treasure generation and stuff like that up until the actual chest gets placed into the world, and then frankly I have no idea what happens there. I know the players walk in and they loot the chest, and I do all the math behind the scenes, but I don't really know how the chest gets there, and I think it's supposed to hook up to a generator, but
Yeah. Well, that's why we have a team, because there are other people whose job is
Yes.
to do that. So yeah.
Yes, honestly, if it's a question about combat code, I'm your guy. I'm on it. If it's a question about making a door open and close, don't know. I have no idea.
I bet it's a lot more complicated than you think. Would be about my only answer on how do you make a door open and close. Yeah. Let's see. Am I playing hard? Someone's asking about my own hardcore experience, because it is going to be on the live stream here. Yeah, I got started. So last week was really, really busy for me in terms of being a parent. My son had his spring break, and so I was really spending all of last week there, and didn't have an opportunity to really get started even on hardcore until Sunday afternoon. However, on Sunday afternoon, I rolled up my first character, my basic kind of cleric that works for me build. Largely war domain cleric.
Ooh.
Anyway, and I'm currently level 3. Actually, I'm almost level 4 as of last night. And I'm almost done. Well, I'm 2/3 of the way through all the keep stuff, and then I'm going to take level 4. So that's where I am on hardcore. And we'll probably have some playing on hardcore, hopefully, assuming I can survive at least long enough.
I mean, this season is super, super deadly. This season is it's way more challenging, and I think that players are really rising to the challenge. We've seen a gigantic amount of participation this go around, and it's partially because, just in case you guys didn't know, this season, just like last season, is open to everyone and every account type. You do not have to be VIP. You can just get in there and have fun and play with your friends in hardcore, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And
all right,
all the chests can be mimics, including your guild airship chest. Deal with it.
I don't know if that was supposed to be a mimic. I'll be quite
honest. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know if it's supposed to be. I'm just saying it is, and it's not changing anytime soon, so deal with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that involves a chest already in the world, and therefore it's that's kind of my,
we may have to do something someday on that one, but I actually had my first mimic spawn yesterday. I didn't have it at all. I don't know if I had thought we made it possible that they could even spawn in Korthos, like say Sunnyside, but I didn't run into any until I started doing the keep stuff.
I think you have to be level 3.
Okay.
I saw a chat question about Archer's focus on the combat log. I am 99% sure I fixed that, although maybe I missed an effect. I can almost certainly get that taken care of for you, right now. Yeah. But just so I'm sure, is this the Archer's focus? You gain a stack from your standing still, every 3 seconds thing? Just let me know yes or no in the chat.
I think so.
Combat question: is the work in progress to adjust to and fighting the effects on subsequent targets with strike through overhaul, perhaps? That is something I was actually thinking about. Was we're thinking about effects. What if on-hit effects only triggered on the first target hit and strike through and stuff like that? And I'm not 100% sure if that's a good idea or not, but it is something that like we've poked into.
Okay.
D&T not for players, is that only when you log in? Because I believe that got fixed for a previous patch. I'll take another look. It's possible that I've missed something. We just have to stamp the effect with "don't show up" in the chat log. So should be easy peasy. Gosh, is there changing magic missiles? No, the 2 spells on our watch list for amount of procs per second are Multivial and Meteor Swarm, because their area effect is so large. But any changes there, again, would have to go through, like, it would be a pretty significant thing, and we'd obviously let you guys know well in advance, and we'd talk about it.
I'm catching up on Facebook here. So, will it be possible to hit a ×3 multiplier with melee hits?
No. Right now, we still have the 100% double strike cap in effect. So if you have over 100% double strike, that will not affect your main hand hits, with the caveat that currently, right now on Lamania, so this is the current version of the build, if you have over 100% double strike, that does contribute up for your offhand double strike chance, which right now is at half of your double strike, your main hand double strike. So if you have 120 main hand double strike, that's going to cap at 100%. But your offhand will double strike 60% of the time. Now, granted, that may change, because that's even capping it at 50% is a gigantic boost to almost all 2-weapon fighters right now. But as that is right now, there's a cap of 100% on both offhand and main hand.
Okay.
All right, why can't I use old hardcore horses on current hardcore? That actually may be an oversight. Our vendors are very weird because they have to exist in 2 places at once. I'll poke people. It's possible that's not intended.
Yeah.
All right, Favor Soul heal wall procs a bunch of Epic Destiny debuffs as friendly fire, like Shreddy's track. Oh yikes, that's really bad.
Yeah,
I can take a look at that.
That one I know personally this week. I have sent that over to our QA team in that, so I know that they're at least aware of it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, that looks like the combat log Archer's Focus thing is still happening. I will take a look at that. Would it be feasible to back up Reaper progress, build a system transfer over? Anything that we would do to adjust Reaper mode's rewards as a whole would obviously save your progress. We wouldn't just destroy everyone's 4 years of work. We would find a solution.
Yep.
You made stuff like trash can lid. Can we get the trash can? That's a great question.
You trash can't.
Purification. Yeah, purification is has always been a weird ability. It's very strange. It ends up in a situation where just like this is kind of the same problem that Monk's Fist of Light has, in which it bypasses a lot of weird restrictions because technically the opponent is healing you rather than you healing yourself. And purification, the enemy is applying the debuff to its friends rather than the enemy is applying it, or rather than you applying it to your enemies. So we end up with situations where sometimes those buffs cross over in a way that isn't really ideal.
All right, we have a few minutes left before the end of the show here. I did want to call out that we have a developer event tonight, and so please do check out Lamania tonight. I'm going to call up the forum thread here real quick while I talk, and yeah, I'll also see if I can get that bonus out. We have got someone who's kind of been on vacation and some other things happening that have meant that our bonuses have been a little laggy as well in terms of us putting them into our schedule. So sorry about that, folks. Should be fixed within a couple weeks.
Do I have time to answer one more question?
Yeah, you got probably time for a couple.
All right. So someone asked, is 2-weapon fighting offhand chance and procs affected by these changes? What about monks? So one of the things we did with these changes is retain offhand strikes as its own separate ability. So if you are playing in a style like monks or 2-weapon fighting that has a chance for an offhand strike, that chance for an offhand strike and that offhand strike will still apply as it does right now. So you'll see your other separate hand do its separate roll and do its separate procs, including monks.
Okay. Real quick on that bonus, by the way, I was correct. Guess what's going to be kicking off on Thursday? That would be the Festival of the Traveler. So we're going to have the Festival of the Traveler run through this weekend, all the way through next week and next weekend, and then shut off that following Monday. And I'll talk to the crew to see if we can't get a couple of freebies as a coupon or something this week as well, for the tokens.
All right. Does anyone else have any last-minute questions here before I disappear to the aether? And by that I mean see you all tonight. I gotta fix Archer's focus. I gotta fix it. It's really important.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. And we'll be back next week, Wednesday at noon. Probably not on the money. We'll probably be on hardcore next week. See how things go there. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon.